The day has not fully released yet. Thoughts still move in familiar patterns, returning to moments that feel unfinished. Conversations replay themselves. Small details resurface without invitation. Even in the quiet, the mind keeps drifting outward as if something remains unresolved. There is a subtle tension in that movement, not urgent, but persistent, a sense that attention should still be placed somewhere else, somewhere beyond this moment. Here, that pull begins to lose its strength. Nothing here requires completion. The fragments of the day do not need to gather into meaning. They can remain scattered, loosely held, without consequence. Effort softens when it is no longer reinforced. The habit of holding things together relaxes on its own. There is no pressure to maintain coherence, no need to prepare for what follows. The mind may continue to move. That movement does not need to be stopped. It can pass through without being organized or corrected. This moment does not depend on clarity. It does not ask for understanding. It does not expect improvement. The noise of the day can exist without being shaped. Loose ends do not require attention. Unanswered questions are allowed to remain unanswered. Nothing is being carried forward. Nothing is being set aside for later. Here, the weight of trying becomes less relevant, not removed, simply unnecessary. The sense of being responsible for everything begins to fade, not dramatically, quietly. There is no need to arrive anywhere else, no need for this moment to lead somewhere. It can remain exactly as it is. For now, that is enough. There is often a quiet resistance when effort begins to loosen, a feeling that stopping might mean something is being neglected, as if rest must be justified before it is allowed. That tension does not need to resolve itself here. It can remain faint, half-formed, without direction. The habit of trying has been active for a long time, trying to improve, trying to understand, trying to keep things from falling apart. Even when nothing urgent remains, that habit continues. It lingers in the background asking for movement. Here it does not receive an answer. Nothing is being taken away by not trying. Nothing important is lost when effort pauses. The systems that carry the body forward do not require supervision. The sense of responsibility begins to thin, not because it has been dismissed, but because it no longer applies to this moment. There is no task attached to being here, no role to maintain, no version of yourself that needs to be upheld. The mind may search briefly for direction. That search can pass without result. It does not need to be satisfied. Permission does not arrive as a decision. It appears quietly when there is nothing left to insist on. The need to do something useful with this moment fades. The need to make rest productive loses relevance. This space does not require participation. It does not ask for cooperation. Even effort is allowed to remain if it does. It simply no longer leads. Nothing needs to be released on purpose. Nothing needs to be placed down carefully. The body continues without instruction. Breath continues without monitoring. There is no standard to meet here, no expectation waiting. The feeling of needing to try softens, not because it is wrong, but because it is unnecessary. This moment stands on its own, complete without adjustment. There is often a quiet resistance when effort begins to loosen, a subtle hesitation, not loud, not dramatic, just a faint sense that stopping might mean something is being overlooked, as if rest requires a reason, as if letting go must first be explained. That feeling does not need to resolve itself here. It does not need reassurance. It does not need to be corrected. It can remain exactly as it is, half-formed, uncertain, without direction. The habit of trying has been present for a long time. Trying to keep things moving, trying to stay ahead of what might happen next, trying to prevent things from falling out of place. Even when nothing urgent remains, that habit continues. It lingers quietly, waiting for another reason to engage. Here it does not find one. There is no requirement to improve this moment, no expectation that it should lead somewhere else. Nothing here needs to justify its existence. The sense of responsibility that usually presses inward begins to thin. Not because it has been rejected, not because it is wrong, but because it does not belong to this moment. It loosens gradually, almost without notice. Nothing important is taken away by not trying. Nothing essential depends on continued effort right now. The structures that support the body remain steady. Breath continues. The rhythm of the body remains intact. There is no need to supervise it. The mind may briefly search for direction. That search does not need to succeed. It can dissolve without answer. There is no task attached to being here, no role waiting to be filled, no version of yourself that needs to be maintained. The need to be useful fades quietly. The need to make rest productive loses its urgency. Nothing here is measured by outcome. This space does not require participation. It does not ask for cooperation. It does not respond to effort. Even effort itself is allowed to remain, if it does. It can exist in the background without shaping what happens next. Nothing needs to be released deliberately. Nothing needs to be set down with care. There is no technique unfolding, no method being applied. The body continues without instruction. Breath moves without being guided. Awareness remains without direction. There is no standard to meet, no quiet test being passed or failed. The feeling of needing to try softens further, not abruptly, not all at once. It simply loses relevance. This moment stands on its own, complete without adjustment, whole without effort. Nothing is missing from it. Nothing needs to be added. Thoughts continue to appear. They do not stop simply because the day has quieted. They arrive in fragments, in echoes, in half-remembered phrases. Some feel familiar, some feel unfinished, some carry no clear meaning at all. They move on their own. There is often an assumption that thoughts must be followed, that each one requires attention, that something important might be missed if they are not examined. That assumption does not need to hold here. Thoughts can pass without being understood. They can move without being organized. They can arise and fade without being given a place. A thought may appear, then dissolve before it finishes forming. Another may linger briefly, repeating itself without purpose. None of this needs correction. The mind has learned to connect everything, to build chains, to search for cause and consequence. Here, those connections begin to loosen, not forcefully, not all at once. They loosen the way a knot loosens when it is no longer pulled tight. A thought may arise about earlier in the day. Another may drift toward what might happen tomorrow. They do not need to be brought back. They are not taking you anywhere. They can pass through like distant movement, present but not demanding. Meaning does not need to be extracted from them. They do not need to be resolved into understanding. A thought can exist without becoming a problem. It can remain incomplete, unfinished, unanswered. The habit of responding begins to soften. There is less urgency to engage, less pressure to clarify. Thoughts begin to feel lighter, not fewer, just less solid. They arrive without weight. They leave without trace. Some thoughts may repeat themselves out of habit. That repetition does not require participation. It can continue without reinforcement. The space around each thought becomes more noticeable. The pause before one appears. The quiet after it fades. That space does not need to be held open. It is already there. Thought and space are no longer separate. One does not interrupt the other. A thought may pass through awareness without changing it, like a sound passing through a room. It does not rearrange anything. There is no need to slow thinking down, no need to speed it up, no need to make it behave differently. The mind continues in its own rhythm. It simply stops leading. Thoughts no longer point forward. They no longer suggest direction. They no longer insist on relevance. They appear, then lose interest. Attention becomes less attached, less involved, not withdrawn, just unoccupied. There is no sense of missing something, no sense that something important is happening elsewhere. Thoughts do not require response to remain harmless. They do not become dangerous when ignored. They are allowed to come and go freely. The absence of engagement begins to feel natural, not empty, not dull, just open. Thoughts may still brush against awareness, but they no longer cling. They pass without leaving residue. There's less effort to track them, less effort to stay oriented. Orientation becomes unnecessary. Nothing needs to be figured out in this space. Nothing needs to be concluded. The day does not need to be reviewed. The future does not need to be prepared. Thoughts lose their role as messengers. They no longer carry instructions. They become background movement, soft, uninsistent. The mind does not disappear. It simply rests behind what is happening. There is no clear boundary between thinking and not thinking. They blend. What remains is not silence, not emptiness, just a gentle absence of interference. Thoughts may return briefly with urgency. They may attempt to pull attention back into familiar patterns. That movement does not disturb anything. There is no need to resist it, no need to follow it. It passes the same way it arrived. Awareness does not tighten around it. It remains open. This openness does not belong to effort. It is what remains when effort steps aside. Thoughts no longer define the moment. They no longer describe it. They simply pass through. And as they do, the sense of needing to engage fades further. Nothing is being lost by this. Nothing is being overlooked. The mind is allowed to move without direction, without purpose. And in that absence of purpose, rest deepens quietly. Awareness begins to settle lower, not away from thought, but beneath it. The body has been present all along, quiet, steady, waiting without demand. It does not ask to be checked. It does not require interpretation. Weight becomes more noticeable than meaning. The simple fact of being supported, surface meeting surface. There is a sense of contact that does not move. It does not shift with thought. It does not respond to memory. The body remains where it is. Subtle sensations appear without needing names. Pressure, warmth, a faint sense of heaviness. They do not need to be arranged. They do not need to form a picture. The body does not think about rest. It simply begins to settle. There is no instruction guiding it, no sequence unfolding. Muscles release without announcement, not all at once, not deliberately. Tension loosens where it no longer serves a purpose. Elsewhere it may remain. Both are allowed. The body does not require symmetry. It does not need to feel balanced. Breath continues in its own rhythm, unmeasured, unobserved. It moves because it moves. There is no effort involved in keeping it going, no need to follow its pattern. The chest rises, the chest falls. That movement belongs to the body, not to attention. The sense of form becomes softer. Edges feel less defined. The body is no longer something to manage. It is simply present. Awareness drifts closer to sensation than to thought, not by intention, by gravity. The body does not ask for awareness. It does not react when awareness wanders. It remains. There is a quiet continuity here, a steadiness that does not change with mood or memory. The body has no interest in the day that has passed. It does not review events. It does not anticipate what comes next. It exists entirely here. Sensation rises and fades without narrative, without interpretation. A feeling may appear, then dissolve before it is recognized. Another may linger gently, without direction. None of this needs to be followed. The body accepts rest without hesitation. It does not question whether it is deserved. It responds only to the absence of demand. As effort recedes further, the body settles more completely, not deeper, just more fully. There is less distinction between awareness and sensation. One no longer observes the other, they overlap. The sense of occupying a body softens, not disappearing, just becoming less pronounced. There is less need to hold shape, less need to maintain posture. The body does not collapse. It simply rests where it is. Breath becomes quieter, not slower, just less noticed. Moments pass without being marked. Time loses its structure here, not suspended, just uncounted. The body remains steady as time softens around it. Nothing is required from it, nothing is expected. It continues on its own terms. Awareness no longer searches for where it belongs. It settles naturally into sensation. There is no need to go further, no need to arrive anywhere else. The body is already doing what it knows how to do, and it continues without effort, without guidance, without interruption. Nothing needs to happen here. No transition is required. No shift needs to be noticed. The moment continues on its own. There is no activity unfolding, no inner movement asking for response, just the continuation of what is already here. Nothing changes. The body remains where it is. Awareness remains nearby. There is no reason to adjust either. This space does not invite effort. It does not respond to it. Doing nothing is not an action here. It is simply the absence of demand. Time passes quietly, not quickly, not slowly, just passing. There is no sense of progress, no sense of delay. Moments do not point toward anything. They arrive, they leave. Nothing follows them. Nothing prepares for what comes next. The mind does not need to stay active. It does not need to shut down. It can remain idle, unoccupied. Thoughts may appear briefly. They do not interrupt anything. They dissolve on their own. Nothing needs to be done with them. Silence may appear between sounds. Sound may appear within silence. Neither needs to be separated. They coexist. The body does not wait for instruction. It does not ask what to do next. It continues without reference. Breath moves, then moves again. There is no need to notice when it happens. Awareness does not need to stay alert. It does not need to follow anything closely. It can remain open, undirected. Nothing here depends on attention. If attention drifts, nothing is lost. If attention fades, nothing changes. There is no task hidden in this stillness, no purpose waiting to be discovered. This time is not useful, and it does not need to be. Usefulness is irrelevant here. Nothing is being improved. Nothing is being repaired. There is no problem present. Even the idea of rest does not need to be held. Rest happens without being named. The body settles where it settles, not deeper, just settled. There's no finish line to cross, no depth to reach. This moment does not become something else. It remains. Nothing presses forward, nothing pulls back. There is no edge to hold. Awareness becomes less pointed, less interested, not dull, just unengaged. The sense of time loosens further. Minutes do not announce themselves. Seconds are not counted. Duration becomes indistinct. There is no need to keep track. Nothing is being missed. Even boredom has no place here. There is nothing to be bored of. Nothing is happening, and that is enough. The body does not need reassurance. It does not need confirmation. It continues quietly. Awareness remains without posture, without direction. There is no inside to protect, no outside to monitor. Everything is allowed to be unfinished. Nothing needs to conclude. This moment does not close. It does not resolve. It simply continues, like a pause that does not end, like space that does not ask to be filled. Nothing asks for engagement. Nothing asks for release. Doing nothing remains effortless, not because it is chosen, but because nothing else is required. The voice does not need to hold your attention. It can remain present without asking to be followed. There is no message arriving now, no meaning being delivered, only sound. Words appear, then dissolve into their own echo. Nothing needs to be remembered. The voice does not guide. It does not lead anywhere. It stays close, then gradually steps back, not disappearing, just becoming less distinct. Sentences no longer connect tightly. They do not build toward anything. They rest where they land. Sometimes a word lingers, sometimes it fades before it finishes. Both are fine. The sound of the voice blends with the space around it. It becomes part of the background, like a familiar presence in another room. Still there, but no longer requiring attention. Awareness does not need to stay close. It can drift. If a sentence is missed, nothing is lost. If several pass unnoticed, nothing changes. The voice continues whether it is heard or not. It does not depend on listening. Words soften at their edges. They no longer press forward. They arrive and leave without leaving a mark. There is no need to follow the rhythm, no need to stay aligned with the pace. The voice does not mind being ignored. It continues quietly. Sometimes it feels nearer, sometimes farther away. Distance is not important. The sound exists without position. Awareness may float in and out. There is no need to anchor it. Nothing here requires clarity. The voice does not explain anything. It does not clarify what is happening. It simply remains as sound, like wind moving through a space, present, unconcerned. The meaning of the words becomes less relevant. Their tone remains, gentle, uninsistent. The voice no longer stands apart from the quiet. It rests within it. Silence does not interrupt the voice. The voice does not interrupt silence. They overlap. Pauses stretch naturally, not intentionally. There is no effort shaping them. The voice slows without slowing down. It becomes less directional. It does not point forward. Each phrase stands alone, unconnected, complete by itself. Awareness does not gather them together. There is no story forming. The voice does not mind repeating itself or saying very little. It is not trying to be effective. It is not trying to reach you. It remains nearby only as long as it needs to. Then it thins, not suddenly, not completely, just enough. Words become softer than the space between them. At times, only the tone remains. At times, only silence. Both are allowed. The voice does not need to finish. It does not need to conclude. It does not need to disappear. It simply becomes less noticeable, like a sound you no longer track, like something you realize you stopped listening to some time ago. The voice continues in this way, unfocused, unattached, present without insistence. Eventually, even the sense of a voice becomes faint, not gone, just unimportant, and nothing replaces it. The space around the voice feels wider now, not because anything has changed, but because less is being held. Words still appear quietly, without urgency. They do not gather. They do not form a line. Each one stands alone, then fades. Silence stretches naturally between them, not waiting, not pausing on purpose, just there. The voice no longer feels close nor far. Distance becomes unclear. Sometimes a phrase is heard, sometimes only the tone remains, sometimes nothing at all. None of this needs to be noticed. Awareness drifts without direction. It does not settle anywhere for long. There is no effort to keep listening, no effort to stop. Listening happens, then stops happening, then happens again. Nothing depends on it. The voice does not react when attention fades. It continues in the same way, soft, unattached. Words arrive without emphasis. They do not ask to be remembered. A sentence may begin and end without registering. Another may pass completely unnoticed. Nothing is lost. The space between words grows more familiar than the words themselves. Silence no longer feels empty. It feels neutral, unoccupied. Time loosens further. Moments no longer stack. They do not point forward. They simply pass. The sense of sequence thins. Before and after lose their shape. There is no anticipation, no completion. The body remains steady within this softness, not sinking, not floating, just there. Breath continues without reference, sometimes felt, sometimes not. Neither matters. Awareness no longer checks where it is. It does not confirm anything. It rests without posture. The idea of listening fades. The idea of not listening fades as well. Both become irrelevant. The voice blends completely into the background, like a sound you no longer place, still present, but no longer distinct. Words soften until they barely form. They dissolve before taking shape. Sometimes only a rhythm remains, sometimes only quiet. There is no need to follow the rhythm. It does not lead anywhere. Nothing signals the next moment. Nothing concludes this one. The sense of being someone here becomes faint, not gone, just less defined. Thoughts do not interrupt this space, neither does silence. Everything rests together. Nothing is being organized. Nothing is being observed closely. Experience remains unfinished. And that unfinished quality feels stable. There is no need to hold this state. No need to remain within it. It remains on its own. Even if attention returns briefly, nothing tightens. Even if sound becomes clearer for a moment, nothing changes. The quiet does not deepen, it does not thin, it simply continues, like a low tide that does not announce itself, like darkness that does not arrive, but is already there. The voice may still be present, or it may not. It no longer matters. Nothing replaces it. Nothing needs to. This space does not close. It does not open further. It stays as it is, unmarked, unfinished, and the night continues without asking for anything more. Nothing shifts here. There is no transition into something else, no sense of entering a new phase. What is present simply continues. The space does not deepen, it does not thin, it stays even. Words still surface from time to time, but they no longer stand out. They blend into the quiet as if they were always part of it. A phrase may appear without beginning, without end. It does not need to be followed. Silence stretches around it without tension. There is no pause that waits for the next sound, no sound that interrupts the quiet. They exist together. The voice no longer arrives from anywhere. It feels locationless, not near, not far, just present. Awareness does not orient toward it. It does not turn away either. It remains open without choosing. There is no sense of sequence now. Moments do not line up. Before and after lose their edges. Time does not move forward. It does not stand still. It becomes indistinct. The body remains as it is, supported, undemanding. Sensation does not ask to be noticed. It does not disappear. It simply exists without signal. Breath continues without rhythm being counted. Sometimes it is felt, sometimes it is not. Neither has meaning. The idea of listening no longer holds shape. Sound arrives or does not arrive. Both are equal. Words may drift through awareness like distant movement. They do not settle. They do not leave residue. Nothing accumulates. The sense of being here softens further, not fading, just loosening. There is less definition around what is happening, no center, no edge. Awareness does not rest on anything in particular. It does not need to. It floats without direction, without effort. The voice does not guide this. It does not withdraw from it. It simply remains as part of the background. At times, only tone remains. At times, even that dissolves. There is no moment when silence begins, no moment when sound ends. They overlap without distinction. Nothing signals that this should change. Nothing prepares the next moment. The absence of movement feels stable, not fragile. There is no need to preserve this state, no need to stay with it. It stays on its own. If attention returns briefly, nothing tightens. If attention fades completely, nothing is lost. The body does not adjust. It does not brace. It continues without reference. The sense of duration dissolves further. Minutes are no longer perceived. There is no awareness of passing time, only continuation. This continuation does not lead anywhere. It does not resolve. It remains unfinished, and that unfinished quality feels complete. Nothing needs to be done with this space. Nothing needs to happen next. The voice remains only as long as it does, not asserting itself, not withdrawing, simply present without direction. And this presence continues without change, without requirement, without expectation. Nothing new begins here. Nothing fades into something else. What remains, remains. The sense of continuation no longer feels like movement. It feels like presence without direction. Words still exist, but they arrive without emphasis. They do not introduce anything. They do not conclude anything. They simply appear, then dissolve. The space between them grows familiar, more familiar than the words themselves. Silence does not wait. Sound does not arrive late. They are already together. The voice does not approach. It does not recede. It has no distance. It exists without location, without intention. Awareness does not turn toward it. It does not turn away. There is no gesture of listening, no gesture of stopping. Listening happens and then no longer happens without notice. The idea of following along has disappeared. There is nothing to follow. There is no thread being held. Moments no longer stack into sequence. They do not move forward. They rest side by side without order. Time no longer feels like time passing. It feels like time resting, not paused, just unmeasured. The body remains supported, without adjustment, without response. Sensation continues without signaling. Pressure exists, then fades. Warmth exists, then fades. None of it requires recognition. Breath moves without rhythm being counted. Sometimes it is present, sometimes it is absent. Neither state carries meaning. The sense of being here loosens further, not dissolving, just becoming less defined. There is no center to return to, no edge to drift away from. Awareness does not anchor itself anywhere. It remains open, without preference. Words may surface occasionally, single words, fragments. They do not connect. They do not form intention. They do not pull attention forward. They pass without touching anything. The voice does not change tone. It does not soften further. It does not grow distant. It stays even, like a sound that belongs to the space itself. There is no moment when this becomes silence, no moment when sound resumes. There is no threshold. Everything remains in the same register. Nothing marks duration. Minutes do not announce themselves. Seconds are not felt. There is no sense of how long this has been happening. There is no sense that it should end. Nothing is being maintained. Nothing needs to be preserved. This state does not require stability. It remains stable without effort. Awareness no longer distinguishes between presence and absence. Both feel equivalent. The idea of rest no longer needs language. It is not named. It does not need to be. The body does not sink further. It does not rise. It stays. There is no preparation for what comes next, no anticipation. Nothing is about to happen. This continuation does not lead anywhere. It does not transition. It does not open into something else. It remains unfinished, without feeling incomplete. Nothing is missing from it. Nothing needs to be added. The voice remains only as long as it does. Not signaling, not guiding, simply present as part of the background. And this background continues unchanged, unmarked, without direction. Nothing shifts in any noticeable way. There is no sense of arriving somewhere new, no sense of leaving what came before. What is present continues without adjustment. The voice remains as part of the space, not foreground, not background, just there. Words appear with less separation now. They do not stand alone as clearly. They settle into one another without forming direction. A sentence may unfold slowly, not to explain anything, but simply to occupy the space it passes through. There is no need to follow it, no need to wait for where it leads. It does not lead anywhere. The sound of the voice feels even, unvaried, uninsistent, like a steady texture in the room. Awareness does not move toward it. It does not move away. It remains open, without preference. Moments pass without being marked. There is no signal that one has ended or that another has begun. Time feels present without being counted. The body remains supported, quietly, without response. Sensation continues in a neutral way. Pressure exists where it exists. Warmth remains where it remains. None of it asks for attention. None of it disappears. Breath moves without emphasis. It does not need to be tracked. It does not need to be released. It moves because it moves. The sense of being here softens further, not fading, just spreading out. There is less definition around experience, less edge, less center. Nothing is being checked, nothing is being held in place. Words continue to pass through the space. They are not separated from the quiet. They do not interrupt it. They belong to it. Sometimes a phrase is noticed briefly. Sometimes it is not. The difference no longer matters. The idea of listening no longer organizes experience. Sound arrives and blends without requiring recognition. Silence does not replace the voice. The voice does not replace silence. They rest together without contrast. There is no sense of sequence now. Moments do not line up behind one another. They exist side by side without order. Time no longer feels like movement. It feels like presence without direction. The body remains steady in this presence. It does not sink further. It does not rise. It stays as it is. There is no anticipation, no preparation. Nothing is about to happen. Awareness does not wait. It does not expect. It remains without posture. Words continue, not as statements, but as sound moving through the space. They do not describe anything. They do not clarify anything. They simply occur. The rhythm remains unchanged, even, unhurried. Nothing accelerates, nothing slows. The voice does not adjust to attention. It does not grow clearer or more distant. It stays consistent, like a steady environment that does not respond to movement. There is no moment when this becomes something else, no threshold. Everything remains in the same register. The sense of duration becomes faint. Minutes are no longer felt as minutes. There is no awareness of how long this has been happening. There is no sense that it should end. Nothing is being maintained. Nothing needs to be preserved. This state does not require stability. It remains stable without effort. Awareness no longer distinguishes between sound and space. They feel equivalent. Neither is foreground, neither is background. The idea of rest no longer needs language. It does not need to be named. It remains present without description. The body continues quietly, without instruction, without response. Breath continues quietly, without pattern being followed. There is no need to remain with this, no need to leave it. It remains on its own. If attention returns briefly, nothing tightens. If attention fades completely, nothing changes. The voice remains only as long as it does, not guiding, not withdrawing, simply present as part of the space itself, and this space continues unchanged, unmarked, without direction. Nothing announces itself here. There is no sense that something new has begun, no indication that anything has ended. The space remains as it was. The voice continues without intention, not to say anything, not to explain. It remains simply because it remains. Words move through the space at an even pace. They do not arrive separately. They do not stand out. They blend into one another and into the quiet around them. There is no emphasis, no contrast. Awareness does not shift toward the sound. It does not move away. It stays open without deciding. Time continues without shape. Moments do not mark themselves. They do not point forward. They do not fall behind. They exist without order. The body remains steady, not adjusting, not responding. Sensation is present without instruction. Pressure exists where it exists. Warmth remains where it remains. Nothing asks to be noticed. Breath continues without pattern being followed. It does not become slower. It does not become deeper. It simply continues. The sense of being here spreads gently, not outward, not inward, just present without boundary. Words continue to pass through the space. They do not interrupt silence. They do not replace it. They belong to the same field. Sometimes sound is noticed briefly, sometimes it is not. Neither state carries importance. The idea of listening fades further. Sound exists without being tracked. Silence exists without being defined. They remain together without separation. Nothing is being prepared. Nothing is about to happen. There is no anticipation. Awareness does not wait. It remains without posture, without direction. The voice does not guide attention. It does not release it either. It stays neutral, like a constant texture that does not change with movement. There is no moment when this becomes something else, no transition. Everything stays in the same register. The sense of duration softens further. Minutes are no longer felt clearly. There is no awareness of passing time. Nothing needs to conclude. Nothing needs to continue. It continues anyway. The body remains supported without adjustment. Breath continues without reference. The voice remains without intention, and the space continues unchanged, unmarked, without direction. Nothing about this moment announces itself as different from the one before it. There is no signal that anything has shifted, and no suggestion that something new is forming. What is present simply continues, not because it is meant to, but because nothing interrupts it. The voice remains within the space in the same way the space remains within itself. It does not step forward, and it does not recede. It does not seek attention, and it does not respond when attention drifts elsewhere. Words move through the air without urgency. They are not arranged to be understood, and they are not placed to be remembered. They exist only long enough to pass through the moment, then dissolve without residue. There is no thread to follow here. Sentences do not connect into meaning, and meaning does not accumulate. Each phrase stands on its own, complete without reference to what came before or what might come after. Time does not feel as though it is moving forward. It does not feel paused either. It feels present in a way that no longer requires measurement. The body remains supported in a neutral way, not settling deeper, not lifting, not adjusting. It stays where it is, without asking for confirmation. Sensation continues without instruction. Pressure exists where it exists. Warmth remains where it remains, and neither asks to be noticed. They do not disappear when they are not attended to, and they do not intensify when awareness brushes past them. Breath continues without reference. It does not become slower, and it does not become deeper. It moves because movement is already happening. Awareness no longer positions itself in relation to anything. It does not turn towards sound, and it does not turn away from it. It remains open without choosing a direction. The idea of listening has softened to the point where it no longer organizes experience. Sound arrives when it arrives, and silence is present when sound is not. There is no boundary between the two that needs to be maintained. The voice becomes part of the environment rather than something happening within it. Like a steady texture that does not change when attention moves, it remains consistent, even, and unremarkable. Nothing here prepares the next moment. Nothing signals a conclusion. There is no sense that this needs to resolve into something else. Minutes are no longer perceived as minutes. There is no clear awareness of duration, only a sense of continuation that does not point forward or backward. The body remains steady within this continuation. It does not search for comfort, and it does not resist what is already present. It simply remains without instruction or response. Thought does not interrupt this space, and silence does not deepen it. They exist together without contrast, neither one standing out as more important than the other. Nothing needs to be maintained for this to continue. Nothing needs to be protected. It remains stable without effort. The voice continues only as part of this stability, not guiding, not withdrawing, not changing its role, and this environment remains exactly as it is, unchanged, unmarked, and without direction. Nothing needs to change for this to continue. The voice does not step away. It simply becomes less distinct. Words no longer arrive as phrases. They arrive as sound, then blend back into the quiet. There is no moment when the voice ends, no point where something else begins. Sound continues without intention. The space does not react. It remains steady. The body does not adjust. Breath continues without reference. Awareness does not turn toward what follows. It does not need to. Listening no longer organizes anything. Sound exists without needing to be understood. The voice no longer carries meaning. It carries only tone. That tone does not separate itself from what comes next. There is no instruction to follow, no need to stay present. Nothing is being asked. The voice becomes part of the background, then part of the space, then indistinguishable from it. Sound continues without direction, without edge, and whatever remains after this does not require attention. It can simply be there. There is nothing else you need to do. Sometimes peace is not something we must learn. It is something we remember. The world pulls us outward, toward goals, toward noise, toward endless motion. But when the heart grows quiet, we begin to sense a deeper rhythm beneath it all, a rhythm that has always been waiting, softly calling us home. This quiet home lives inside you, but it can be easy to forget. That is why Gassho exists, not to add anything new, but to help you return. A space built for stillness, for reflection, for the gentle work of being. In its name, Gassho, there is a gesture, two hands meeting in respect and gratitude, a gesture of unity between self and world, between heart and breath, between sound and silence. When you open the Gassho app, you are not entering another screen. You are stepping into a small temple that travels with you, a place where you can sit without expectation, breathe without demand, and listen without effort. Inside you will find guided meditations, stories inspired by Buddhist wisdom, and the steady presence of sutras, not as lessons, but as companions. The sound you are about to hear is one of those companions, a sound carried through generations, a sound shaped by breath, devotion, and time. You do not need to understand the words. You do not need to follow the rhythm. You do not need to stay awake for it. Let the sound arrive as it is. Let it move through awareness without resistance. Let it remain, even as attention fades. There is nothing left to do, only to rest. Let the breath settle. Let the body sink, and simply listen. The sound of the sutra continues, offered from a temple in the quiet mountains of Koya-san, shared here through the Gassho app whenever you wish to return to silence.
小法九小有一世界先生欲の調整関連特性小法有研究学習長福神小有常連帝本殿不利合創前小有千人 小法九小有一世界先生欲の調整感銘特性小法有研究楽主張福心小有常連定本然無理合創前小有千人因地心正常連有人銀行三万カサ東海来世界欲霊死法不幸不可臨即税収法環境小三銀行主